Let us consider strict monotheism. Okay, so in this view, there's one eternal God, one being, one person, completely united, not in the least bit divided. And I think it may very well be argued that this God lacks something, namely relationship. And so this God had to create humanity to enjoy that which it lacked. And yet, since this God is alone in eternity, relationship is just not a part of this God's being. And so when it creates humanity, it must necessarily concoct an arbitrary moral system for humanity to follow.
Gravesite rituals and pilgrimages continue around Safed. Here, followers gather at the tomb of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Some are practicing Luria's teachings. One of Luria's main contributions to Kabbalah was a new concept of creation.
The world only exists because God needed somebody to relate to, implying that God has some need for love, for relationship.
Let us consider Trinitarian monotheism. Now, the view here is one single God, so we're not talking about tritheism or a triad or anything like that. And again, the key here being, one single unified being, and yet three persons who make up the Godhead. And so there's a unity and then there's a diversity. Three co-equal, co-eternal, coexisting persons. And so this God has eternally enjoyed relationships that are unified within God's single being and yet diverse amongst the persons. And so when it comes to God's creation of humanity, morality is derived directly from God's very nature, his very essence and very character. It is God's very essence because God is a relational being and has been so eternally. So on this view, we have morality being benevolent in that it's derived from God's being one single being, and yet it is relational in that it's enjoyed amongst the persons of the Godhead. And so in this view, this is why it seems to be that everything in the universe enjoys relationships, from the chemical to the animal, and from the laws of nature to human beings. Everything, absolutely everything in the universe is in relation, expressing God's relational nature. And indeed, in the New Testament, it states that that which can be known of God, his eternal power and Godhead, can be seen in the things that were made. And so we see from the things that were made that everything is in relation, and it's based on God's very, very nature and essence. His very character is relational and moral. And so the triune God neither adheres to external morality nor constructs arbitrary morality, since they are a very part of his nature and being. And it is from this that morality's ontology most firmly rests.
God needed somebody to relate to. God has some need for love, for relationship. God needed somebody to relate to. God has some need for love, for relationship.
I'm a little concerned right now about your salvation and stuff.
We want you to be happy for evers and evers.